The summer of '98 was, to my memory, unusually hot, oppressive even, as if the sun itself harbored a grudge against the earth. I was 22, adventurous, somewhat naive, which perhaps explains why I ignored the many warnings of the old locals in Cedar Grove. They said it was a bad season to explore the old Wilkerson property, but the thrill of the unknown drew me like a moth to a flame. It began as a dare, really, a challenge thrown carelessly among friends under the sweltering heat of an August afternoon. We were at the lake, skin glistening with sweat, when Tom, always the instigator, mentioned the Wilkerson house. "You know they say it's haunted, right?" he teased, his eyes scanning our faces for a hint of fear. There was none, or so I thought. People hear things, see things. Wouldn't it be cool to check it out at night? Might be fun, I agreed, the words slipping from my lips before reason could catch it. That was the first step down a path that, unbeknownst to me, would alter the course of my summer, and perhaps my life. The plan was simple. We would hike up to the dilapidated mansion just after sunset, equipped with flashlights, cameras, and a healthy dose of skepticism. I remember laughing as we prepared, scoffing at the notion of ghosts and ghouls. "Come on, it's just an old house," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. What's the worst that could happen? The hike was uneventful, a trail of laughter and light banter weaving through the thickening woods. As the light faded, however, so did our bravado. By the time the silhouette of the Wilkerson house loomed before us, swallowed by ivy and darkness, a tangible sense of dread had settled over the group. "Here it is, folks," Tom announced, his voice a mix of excitement and an unspoken fear. The infamous haunt. The house stood like a relic from another age, its once grand facade now a testament to neglect. The windows were like dark, unblinking eyes, and the porch creaked ominously under our weight as we stepped onto it. "Let's not do this," Jenna whispered, clutching my arm. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her calm demeanor. "We're already here," I reasoned, though my heart hammered in my chest. "Let's just take a quick look inside, and then we can leave." The front door groaned as Tom pushed it open, revealing a hallway shrouded in shadows. We ventured inside, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper and a thick layer of dust that covered everything like a shroud. "Wow, this place is creepy," Alex muttered, his light dancing across an old portrait. The depicted figure seemed to watch us with an intensity that was almost alive. As we delved deeper into the house, the air grew colder, denser, as if resisting our intrusion. We found the living room, furniture draped in white sheets, which, in the dim light, looked eerily like shrouded figures. "Did you hear that?" Jenna suddenly gasped. We all stopped, listening. A soft, almost inaudible whisper seemed to float through the air, a faint murmur of distress. "It's just the wind," Tom said, though his voice lacked conviction. We continued, each step taking us further into the bowels of the house, until we reached the staircase leading to the second floor. Here, the atmosphere thickened, charged with a palpable sense of dread. The stairs creaked under our weight as we ascended. At the top, the corridor stretched before us, doors lining each side, beckoning with silent promises of long-kept secrets. We hesitated, gathering our courage before we began to explore the rooms. Each was a snapshot of a long-forgotten life, frozen in time. In what appeared to be a child's room, the remnants of a once bright wallpaper clung to the walls. A doll lay on the floor, its glass eyes reflecting our flashlight beams with eerie precision. "Guys, look at this," I called, kneeling to pick up the doll. As I touched it, a chill ran down my spine, a warning that went unheeded. Suddenly, the air shifted, and the faint sound of laughter echoed down the hall, a sound so chilling it raised the hairs on my neck. We turned as one, the light from our flashlight swinging wildly as a shadow moved swiftly across the wall. "What was that?" Alex breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, but I don't want to find out," Jenna replied, her earlier trepidation now a palpable fear. "We should have left then, should have heeded the unspoken warning that draped every shadowed corner of that accursed place. But we didn't." Our curiosity, now tinged with fear, pushed us onward, deeper into the house, where the shadows grew thicker and the air colder. What we found there, in the heart of that darkness, was something so terrifying, so utterly otherworldly, that it defied explanation. We stood before an old door, slightly ajar, where a soft light spilled out, casting an amber glow on the floor. Tom approached it first, his hand reaching out to push it open fully. Inside, the room was unlike any other in the house. It was warm, the air vibrating with an unseen energy. At its center, a figure hovered slightly above the floor, its form blurry and shifting, as if struggling to manifest completely. The figure turned towards us, and a scream built in my throat. "Leave," it whispered, a sound so laden with sorrow and menace that we stumbled backward, tripping over our own feet in our haste to comply. But before we could turn, the door slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. Trapped, we turned back to the figure, which now seemed to gain clarity, its features sharpening in the dim light. What it revealed was a face that was both horrifying and pitiful, marred by the sorrow of ages long past. Its eyes, deep and black, seemed to pierce right through us, reaching into the very depths of our souls. "Why do you disturb me?" the apparition asked, its voice a mixture of anger and despair. "We didn't mean any harm," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "We were just curious." "Curiosity can often lead to one's downfall," it replied, its form becoming more defined, more menacing. The room felt colder now, as if the very air was being sucked into its presence. "What are you?" Alex asked, his usual bravado gone, replaced by a tremor of fear. "I am what remains of regret, of sorrow unending," it said, and with each word, the temperature dropped further, our breaths visible in the cold air. "I am bound to this place, a watcher of decay, a sentinel of the forgotten." "Why are you bound here?" Jenna's voice was soft, trembling. "A curse, for sins once committed," it replied, and with a wave of its hand, the walls of the room seemed to melt away, revealing scenes of its past life. We saw a man, handsome, proud, his laughter filling luxurious rooms, the very rooms that now lay in ruins around us. But as the scenes played out, the laughter turned to shouts, the opulence to decay. We watched, transfixed, as the man's life spiraled into darkness, his actions becoming cruel, his heart cold. The last scene showed him alone, his family gone, his friends turned away, his life a shattered echo of its former glory. The vision faded, and the room returned to its dismal state, the ghost staring at us with those deep, sorrowful eyes. "I was that man," it said. "And now, I am trapped here, a ghost condemned to relive my failures for eternity." We stood in silence, the weight of its story pressing down upon us. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the consequences of one's actions. "Can we help you?" I asked, moved by the depth of its sadness. "Help me?" It seemed surprised by the offer. "Yes, perhaps you can." "How?" Tom asked, skepticism threading through his fear. "Free me from this curse. Find the relic that binds me here. Destroy it, and you may free my soul," it instructed, its voice a desperate whisper. "What relic?" Jenna inquired, her curiosity piqued despite the fear. "A locket, containing the essence of my lost love. It is hidden somewhere in this house, locked away in my final act of spite," the ghost revealed. We agreed to help, not fully understanding the task before us. The spirit nodded, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. "Be wary," it warned. "The house will not let go easily." Armed with nothing but our flashlights and a newfound purpose, we began our search. The house seemed to groan under the weight of its own history as we moved from room to room, each step forward a defiance of the will that seemed embedded in the very walls. As we searched, strange occurrences began to escalate. Doors slammed shut of their own accord, trapping us within rooms. Whispers filled the air, urgent and unintelligible, as if the house itself was trying to communicate. Shadows danced at the edges of our vision, shapes that were neither human nor animal, shifting in and out of existence. In the library, a room choked with dust and decay, we found the locket. It was hidden inside a rotting book on a shelf that creaked with the weight of forgotten knowledge. The locket was beautiful, gold and encrusted with gems, but it was also cold to the touch, as if it absorbed the very light around it. "Just destroy it," Alex said, eager to be done with it. But as I held the locket, I hesitated. The ghost's words echoed in my mind, a warning or perhaps a plea. The air around us grew thick, oppressive, as if the house was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the room erupted into chaos. Books flew from the shelves, pages fluttering like wings of trapped birds, and the walls themselves seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "We need to get out of here," Tom yelled over the din, his voice edged with panic. But as we turned to leave, the way we had come was blocked by a wall that hadn't been there before. The house was rearranging itself, a labyrinth designed to confuse and frighten. We were lost within its heart, the locket our only guide to salvation, or perhaps our doom. "We have to keep going," I said, clutching the cold metal of the locket. "We have to finish what we started." The others nodded, and together, we ventured deeper into the madness of the house, each step taking us further into the unknown. What we found there, in the depths of that cursed place, was something none of us could have prepared for. As we delved deeper, the atmosphere thickened further, and the darkness seemed to swallow even the beams of our flashlights. The air was suffused with a cold dampness that seeped through our clothes, chilling our bones. Jenna's breath came in visible puffs, her face pale under the flickering light. "It feels like the house is alive," she whispered, hugging herself tightly. "Maybe it is," Tom murmured, glancing around nervously. The walls seemed to pulse subtly, as if breathing. We moved slowly, our footsteps muffled by the thick dust that carpeted the floor. The deeper we went, the more the house seemed to resist, its hallways narrowing, the ceilings pressing down upon us. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every creak a warning. The locket in my hand felt heavier, as if it too resisted our journey towards the heart of the house. Its surface was cold and slick, the gems catching the scant light and reflecting it in odd, unsettling ways. Suddenly, Alex stopped dead in his tracks. "Did you guys see that?" His voice cracked, his flashlight beam darting to a corner of the hallway. "What?" I asked, my own light following his. There, just at the edge of the darkness, something moved, too quick to catch, too subtle to identify. It was like a shadow, but twisted and wrong, Alex described, his voice low and tense. We pressed on, our nerves stretched taut. Every sound seemed amplified, the silence between them heavy with anticipation. We reached a door, different from the others we had seen. It was ornate, carved with intricate designs that seemed to twist and move in the dim light. The knob was cold under my hand, and it turned with a reluctant groan. The room beyond was vast, far larger than the exterior of the house would suggest. It was a grand ballroom, its once lavish decorations now decayed and draped with cobwebs. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their crystals dull and lifeless. At the far end of the room, a large mirror stood, its surface murky and obscured by age. "This must be it," Jenna said, her voice echoing strangely in the large space. "Be careful," I warned as we approached the mirror. The air here was different, thicker, charged with a palpable energy. The locket began to vibrate slightly in my hand, a hum that resonated through my bones. We stood before the mirror, our reflections barely visible in the cloudy glass. "Now what?" Tom asked, looking uneasy. "We need to find out why this is the key," I replied, the locket now almost too hot to hold. "Maybe it shows something." I raised the locket, holding it before the mirror. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the surface of the mirror began to swirl, the murky glass clearing as if a fog was lifting. What appeared in the mirror was not our reflections, but a scene from another time. We saw the ballroom, alive with light and music, filled with elegantly dressed people laughing and dancing. At the center of it all was the man from the ghost story, the owner of the locket, young and vibrant. But as we watched, the scene shifted, the atmosphere souring. Arguments broke out, a fight ensued, and the man was left alone, his expression one of profound sorrow and rage. The scene shifted again, faster now, showing snippets of his life descending into darkness. Until it settled on his final moments, alone in this very room, placing the locket in front of the mirror, a tear running down his cheek. The room around us began to shake, dust falling from the ceiling as the house groaned under an unseen strain. "It's reacting to the locket," Alex yelled over the noise. "We need to break the cycle," I shouted back, understanding dawning on me. "We need to change the ending." But how? The house seemed to be collapsing around us, the energy in the room building to a crescendo. We had to think quickly, our options limited by the chaos erupting around us. Whatever we decided, it needed to be now, before the house, and everything in it, was lost to whatever curse held it, and us, in its grip. Our decision, made in desperation and haste, set into motion a chain of events that none of us could have predicted. As we acted, the foundation of the house trembled, the walls began to crack, and the mirror's surface rippled as if about to shatter. What we unleashed was something so terrifying, so absolute in its power, that our minds struggled to comprehend the full scope of our actions. In that tumultuous moment, I felt the locket pulsing like a heartbeat within my grasp. The mirror's surface had now become a portal to the man's tormented past, swirling with dark energy that seemed to bleed out into the room. We were standing on the brink of something both terrifying and sublime, our every breath echoing in the charged air. "Look!" Jenna screamed over the cacophony of the house's groaning. In the mirror, the scenes began to accelerate, blending into a maelstrom of images that blurred past our eyes. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. There, in the mirror, was the man, looking directly at us with eyes full of sorrow and regret. "I am sorry," he whispered through the glass, his voice a spectral thread reaching across dimensions. "I never meant for this to happen. We can end this," I called back to him, holding up the locket. "Tell us what to do." The ghost nodded, his expression grave. Destroy the locket. It's the anchor that holds me here, in this loop of my own despair. Without hesitation, Tom took the locket from my trembling hands. He looked at each of us, his eyes hard with resolve. We end this now, he said, his voice resolute amidst the chaos around us. He hurled the locket at the mirror with all his might. The impact was like the sound of thunder, reverberating through the room and shaking the very foundation of the house. The mirror's surface cracked, a web of fractures spreading from where the locket struck, glowing with a strange, ethereal light. Then, the locket and the mirror exploded in a burst of blinding light, sending shards of glass and metal flying through the air like lethal rain. We ducked and covered our heads, but the force of the explosion knocked us off our feet. When the light faded and the echoes of the destruction died down, we slowly rose, shaking and disoriented. The room was quiet now, the oppressive energy that had weighed on us gone. The ballroom, though still in ruins, felt just like an ordinary abandoned room. "Is it over?" Alex asked, his voice echoing slightly in the now silent space. I looked around, taking in the calmness that had settled over the place. "I think it is," I replied, a sense of relief washing over me. But as I turned back to the place where the mirror had stood, I froze. There, in the midst of the rubble, stood the ghost, now clear and radiant. He looked at us, a gentle smile replacing the sorrow that had marred his features for so long. "Thank you," he said, his voice no longer just a whisper but clear and warm. "You have freed me." Before our eyes, he began to fade, his form dissolving into the air, a look of peace etched into his features. "Be better than I was," he said, his voice fading with his form. And then he was gone. The room felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. We looked at each other, our faces reflecting a mixture of shock, relief, and exhaustion. "We did it," Jenna said, a small smile breaking through her tired expression. "We actually did it." "We should get out of here," I suggested, and nobody argued. We left the Wilkerson house behind, walking out into the cool night air. The stars were bright above us, and the woods no longer felt threatening but almost welcoming. As we made our way back down the path to where our adventure had begun, we did so in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. We never spoke much of that night again, but it stayed with us, a haunting memory of the time we faced something beyond our understanding and came out changed. The house eventually collapsed completely, taken back by the earth as if it had never been. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear the faint echo of a ballroom dance, a reminder of the man who once lived there, and the night we set him free.